Behind every perfectly coiffed Hollywood leading man lurked a secret studio spent millions to hide. That immaculate hair you admired on Humphrey Bogart? Completely fake. John Wayne's rugged frontier mane? A masterpiece of wig-making. Even Fred Astaire's hair that never moved during those athletic dance numbers had a very specific reason. It was glued on. Today we're exposing Hollywood's most carefully guarded secret, 10 legendary stars whose famous locks were nothing but expensive illusions. From romantic leads to tough guys, these A-listers fooled audiences for decades with hairpieces so convincing you'll never watch their films the same way again. Humphrey Bogart, the quintessential tough guy who defined film noir masculinity, harbored a vulnerability that would have shattered his hard-boiled image. By the time he filmed Casablanca in 1942, Bogart was already completely dependent on elaborate hairpieces to maintain his signature slicked-back look. The man who epitomized cool was secretly battling significant baldness that began in his early 30s. When Bogart's breakthrough finally came, with the Maltese Falcon in 1941, he was 42 years old and his natural hairline had receded dramatically. Warner Brothers invested heavily in custom hairpieces that cost the modern equivalent of $5,000 each. These weren't simple toupees, but engineering marvels constructed with individual strands of European hair, knotted into silk bases so fine they were nearly invisible to cameras. Cinematographer Arthur Edison developed specific lighting techniques exclusively for Bogart's scenes to prevent shadows from revealing the hairpiece edges. They discovered that a particular angle of key lighting, combined with strategic backlighting, could make the hairpiece appear completely natural, even in close-ups. Edison later revealed that Bogart memorized these optimal angles and would subtly adjust his position between takes if he sensed the lighting might expose his secret. Lauren Bacall's autobiography provided the most intimate glimpse into Bogart's relationship with his hairpieces. She wrote that Bogey treated his hairpiece like a military uniform, never appearing without it, even during their most private moments at home. The only exception was swimming, and Bogart enforced a strict no-photography rule around their pool. When friends visited, he'd wear a specially designed swimming cap that looked like wet hair rather than risk exposure. The most poignant revelation came during Bogart's final battle with cancer in 1957. Even as his body deteriorated, he insisted nurses position his hairpiece correctly for visitors. His hairdresser was summoned to the hospital regularly to maintain the illusion. When Katharine Hepburn visited him days before his death, she found him fully dressed with his hairpiece perfectly styled, maintaining his image until the very end. This dedication to preserving his tough guy facade, even while facing death, revealed the deep vulnerability beneath Bogart's hard-boiled exterior. Fred Astaire, the man who revolutionized dance on film with his seemingly effortless grace, performed every routine with an invisible partner that required more technical innovation than any of his choreography. By the time Astaire arrived in Hollywood for his first RKO pictures in 1933, he was already wearing custom-made hairpieces that had to withstand the most physically demanding performances in cinema history. Astaire began losing his hair aggressively in his late 20s, just as he was transitioning from Broadway to Hollywood. The challenge wasn't just concealing baldness, but creating a hairpiece that could survive spinning, jumping, tap dancing, and even dancing on the ceiling in royal wedding. Max Factor's laboratories worked directly with Astaire to develop a revolutionary adhesive that bonded at the molecular level, using a formula that wouldn't break down under heavy perspiration or rapid movement. The hairpieces themselves were engineering marvels constructed with silk bases, rather than the standard lace used for other stars. Each piece cost the equivalent of $20,000 today, and required individual hairs to be knotted by hand in a pattern that matched Astaire's original hair growth. His makeup artist Robert Schiffer revealed that Astaire traveled with 7 identical hairpieces, each at different stages of wear to match continuity requirements during filming. What's remarkable is that despite performing routines that would challenge Olympic athletes, there's not a single documented instance of Astaire's hairpiece failing during a take. He developed an acute awareness of every head movement, instinctively avoiding angles that might reveal the hairpiece edge. Dance partner Ginger Rogers later admitted she was given strict instructions about where she could touch Astaire's head during romantic scenes. One misplaced caress could have exposed Hollywood's most carefully guarded secret. Astaire's perfectionism extended to testing each new hairpiece with a private rehearsal he called the Hurricane Test, spinning and jumping alone in his dressing room while assistants watched for any sign of loosening. He reportedly went through this routine every morning before filming, treating his hairpiece with the same meticulous attention he gave to choreography that would define American dance for generations. John Wayne, the embodiment of American masculinity who defined the Western genre, faced a crisis that threatened everything his image represented. The Duke began losing his hair in his late 30s, just as Stagecoach launched him to superstardom in 1939. By the time he was winning hearts in Red River and she wore a yellow ribbon, Wayne was wearing increasingly elaborate hairpieces, designed specifically to maintain his rugged frontier persona. Unlike the sleek, perfectly styled hairpieces created for urban sophisticates like Cary Grant, Wayne's were intentionally crafted to look weathered and slightly unkempt. His wig maker, Max Factor's chief designer Ern Westmore, revealed they actually added dirt and dust to Wayne's hairpieces before filming Western scenes. The pieces were constructed with coarser hair than typical toupees, using horsehair mixed with human hair to achieve a rougher texture that would photograph authentically on location shoots. The technical challenges of maintaining Wayne's hairpiece during action sequences became legendary among Hollywood crews. Stuntman Chuck Robertson recalled that Wayne wore a specially modified Stetson with an interior band that helped secure his hairpiece during horseback chases. For fight scenes, makeup artists developed a reinforced adhesive that could withstand both sweat and the inevitable grabbing and shoving of Western brawls. They tested it by having Wayne stunt double attempt to pull the hairpiece off, requiring 15 pounds of force before it would budge. Wayne approached his baldness with surprising pragmatism for someone whose career depended on masculine virility. Director Howard Hawks remembered Wayne removing his hairpiece between takes during the scorching Arizona filming of Rio Bravo, fanning himself with it while joking about his Hollywood hay. But the moment cameras rolled, Wayne transformed back into the full-man frontier hero audiences expected. The most revealing moment came during True Grit's production in 1968. Co-star Glenn Campbell accidentally knocked Wayne's hairpiece askew during a rehearsal. Without missing a beat, Wayne adjusted it and growled, "Well, Pilgrim, now you know why I really wear this hat all the time." The crew laughed, but Wayne ensured that story never reached the press during his lifetime. Cary Grant, Hollywood's epitome of masculine elegance, whose impeccable appearance set the standard for sophistication, maintained his perfect image through the most expensive and meticulously crafted hairpieces in the industry. Grant began experiencing significant hair loss in his mid-30s, precisely when he was establishing himself as the ultimate romantic leading man in films like The Philadelphia Story and His Girl Friday. What distinguished Grant's hairpieces was their extraordinary cost and craftsmanship. Each piece required 6 weeks to create and cost 10 times more than standard studio hairpieces, roughly $50,000 in today's currency. The hair was sourced exclusively from European suppliers who provided virgin hair that had never been chemically treated. Each strand was individually knotted into a foundation so fine that makeup artists needed magnifying glasses to inspect the edges before filming. Grant's makeup artist Del Armstrong developed a color-matching system that became the industry standard. They maintained 15 different hairpieces in subtly varying shades to match different lighting conditions. For outdoor scenes, they used pieces with slight red undertones that wouldn't appear flat in natural light. For black and white films, they used pieces with specific gray percentages that would register the correct tone on film. The precision of Grant's hairpiece maintenance bordered on obsessive. He employed a full-time hairpiece specialist who traveled with him and maintained a detailed log of which piece was worn for every scene to ensure absolute continuity. Grant reportedly spent an hour each morning having his hairpiece applied, using a 23-step process that included skin preparation, adhesive application, placement, blending, and styling. Alfred Hitchcock, who directed Grant in 4 films, noticed his star's meticulous attention to his artificial hair. Hitchcock recalled Grant stopping mid-scene during Notorious because he felt a slight shift in his hairpiece that was invisible to everyone else. Grant's response to occasional teasing was characteristically urbane. "Everyone in Hollywood is acting, darling. I'm just more thorough about it than most." Grant's hairpieces evolved naturally as he aged, gradually incorporating gray to maintain credibility. This careful attention to realistic aging helped preserve the illusion throughout his career, making him one of the few stars whose hairpieces never became obviously artificial, even as he entered his 60s. James Stewart, Hollywood's beloved everyman whose authenticity made him the most relatable star of his generation, carried a secret that contradicted everything his image represented. Stewart's approach to hairpieces was unique among Golden Age stars, deliberately choosing imperfection to maintain the genuineness that defined his appeal. He began wearing partial hairpieces in the early 1950s, timing that coincided with his career renaissance in Alfred Hitchcock thrillers. What distinguished Stewart from his contemporaries was his initial resistance to wearing hairpieces at all. Through films like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and It's a Wonderful Life, Stewart appeared with his natural receding hairline clearly visible. He believed this authenticity was crucial to his everyman appeal. However, by his mid-40s, his hair loss had progressed to where studios insisted on enhancement for leading roles. Stewart's makeup artist Charles Schramm developed what they called the imperfect solution. Rather than creating a full youthful hairline, Stewart's pieces were designed to look like the slightly thinning hair of a regular middle-aged man. They deliberately included irregularities, uneven areas, and even small bald spots that would make the hairpiece appear natural. Schramm recalled Stewart specifically requesting that his hairpiece look like something a hardware store owner from Indiana might have, not a movie star. The technical approach to Stewart's hairpieces reflected his practical personality. Unlike stars who spent hours on hairpiece application, Stewart insisted on a simplified 15-minute process. He refused to use the strongest adhesives, preferring comfort over absolute security, which occasionally led to visible shifting during emotional scenes. Director Frank Capra noted that Stewart would sometimes deliberately leave his hairpiece slightly askew, believing it made him more relatable to audiences. Stewart's daughters later revealed their father's surprisingly casual attitude about his hairpiece at home. He'd frequently remove it immediately after returning from the studio, hanging it on a coat rack by the door like any other piece of wardrobe. When grandchildren visited, he'd sometimes let them play with old hairpieces, treating them as costume pieces rather than shameful secrets. This matter-of-fact approach extended to his professional life, where he viewed his hairpiece as simply another tool of his craft, no different from makeup or costumes. Frank Sinatra, the chairman of the board whose transformation from skinny crooner to sophisticated icon included a carefully hidden secret, began wearing hairpieces during his remarkable mid-career comeback. When Sinatra won his Oscar for From Here to Eternity in 1953, he was already dependent on artificial hair to maintain the polished image that would define his Rat Pack era. His relationship with his hairpieces became legendary among his inner circle for both its complexity and occasional comedy. Sinatra's hair loss accelerated dramatically during his tumultuous 40s, a period marked by career struggles and personal turmoil. By the time he signed with Capitol Records and began his artistic renaissance, Sinatra had invested in multiple custom hairpieces created by Hollywood's premier wigmaker, Max Factor. Each piece cost the equivalent of $30,000 today and required monthly maintenance by specialized technicians who would fly to wherever Sinatra was performing. What made Sinatra's case unique was how his hairpieces became an open secret within the entertainment industry while remaining hidden from the public. Dean Martin would incorporate subtle jokes about Sinatra's little friend upstairs into their Rat Pack routines, references that went over most audience members' heads. Sammy Davis Jr. later revealed that Sinatra kept a sense of humor about it privately, once sending his hairpiece to Dean in a hatbox with a note reading, "Even this needs a vacation from your terrible jokes." Sinatra's valet, George Jacobs, documented an elaborate hairpiece routine that bordered on ritual. Sinatra traveled with 7 different pieces, each for specific occasions. Performance pieces with extra volume for stage lighting, subtle pieces for film work, and casual pieces for daily wear. Before important appearances, Sinatra would spend 90 minutes having his hairpiece applied, adjusted, and styled to perfection. The adhesive alone required a 15-step application process. The most revealing moment came during a recording session in 1965, when Sinatra, frustrated with multiple takes, suddenly removed his hairpiece and placed it on the microphone stand. "Maybe this thing will sing better than me today," he quipped to the stunned orchestra. It was one of the few times Sinatra acknowledged his hairpiece publicly, showing that beneath the bravado, he possessed enough confidence to occasionally laugh at his own vanity. Spencer Tracy, considered by many as the greatest actor of Hollywood's golden age, maintained his image of raw authenticity while secretly relying on increasingly elaborate hairpieces throughout his later career. Tracy's situation was particularly ironic, given his famous philosophy that acting should never call attention to itself. He began wearing hairpieces in the early 1950s, just as he entered what many consider his finest period of performances. MGM's approach to Tracy's hair loss was remarkably subtle, implementing a gradual transition that fooled even industry insiders. Makeup artist William Tuttle developed a 5-year plan, starting with small pieces that merely filled in thinning areas, then slowly expanding coverage as audiences grew accustomed to each incremental change. By the time Tracy filmed Bad Day at Black Rock in 1955, he was wearing a full hairpiece, yet the transition had been so gradual that no one noticed the dramatic change. Tracy's hairpieces were specifically designed to look imperfect, matching his reputation for naturalistic acting. The pieces included intentional inconsistencies, areas of different density, and even a slight cowlick that Tracy had possessed in his younger years. Tuttle revealed they spent hours making expensive hairpieces look cheaper, roughing up edges and creating wear patterns that suggested a working man's neglected hair rather than a movie star's coiffure. Katharine Hepburn provided the most intimate insights into Tracy's relationship with his artificial hair. She recalled that Tracy referred to his hairpiece as the damn necessity, and would remove it immediately when they were alone. During their decades-long relationship, she was one of the few people who saw him without it regularly. Hepburn's niece later revealed that Tracy kept his hairpiece on a mannequin head in his dressing room, sometimes having conversations with it when frustrated with a role. The most poignant moment came during Tracy's final film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? His failing health made hairpiece application increasingly difficult, yet he insisted on maintaining his appearance for what he knew would be his last performance. Stanley Kramer recalled Tracy arriving hours early to ensure his hairpiece was perfect, determined to maintain his professional image despite barely having strength to complete scenes. William Holden, the golden boy who evolved into Hollywood's most bankable leading man of the 1950s, struggled with premature hair loss that began affecting his career trajectory just as he reached stardom. Holden's transformation from fresh-faced newcomer to world-weary cynic paralleled his increasing dependence on hairpieces, which he reportedly resented more than any other aspect of Hollywood artifice. Holden began experiencing significant baldness in his early 30s, shortly before his career-defining role in Sunset Boulevard. Ironically, in this film about Hollywood illusions and faded glory, Holden still appears with his natural, visibly receding hairline. By the time he won his Academy Award for Stalag 17 in 1953, he had begun wearing subtle hairpieces that would become permanent fixtures for the remainder of his career. Paramount's hairdresser, Larry Germain, revealed that Holden was one of the most challenging stars to work with regarding hairpieces. Unlike actors who accepted them as professional necessities, Holden viewed his hairpiece as a symbol of Hollywood's fundamental dishonesty. He would often arrive late to hair and makeup, reluctant to begin the daily ritual of transformation. Germain developed a special quick application method specifically for Holden, reducing the process to 20 minutes to minimize his discomfort. The technical challenges reached their peak during the filming of the bridge on the River Kwai in Ceylon's humid jungle. The extreme conditions caused adhesives to fail repeatedly, and in several scenes, careful observers can spot inconsistencies in Holden's hairline between shots. David Lean's assistant director revealed they lost entire shooting days to hairpiece problems, with Holden becoming increasingly frustrated and threatening to abandon the piece entirely. Billy Wilder, who directed Holden in multiple films, noted the actor's complex relationship with his appearance. Holden would remove his hairpiece immediately after each take, carrying it in his hand between setups like a dead animal he was forced to wear. During the filming of Sabrina, Audrey Hepburn accidentally dislodged his hairpiece during a romantic scene. Holden's explosive reaction required a 2-hour break to calm tensions on set. By his later films, Holden's alcoholism made maintaining his hairpieces increasingly difficult, with makeup artists struggling to achieve consistent results. His appearance in The Towering Inferno showed a noticeably artificial hairline that reflected his declining investment in maintaining Hollywood illusions. Burt Lancaster, the former circus acrobat whose athletic prowess made him one of Hollywood's most physical leading men, faced unique challenges in concealing his progressive baldness while performing his own death-defying stunts. Lancaster began wearing hairpieces in his early 40s, just as he was establishing himself as both a serious actor and producer with his own company, presenting a careful balance between artistic credibility and commercial appeal. Lancaster's hairpieces needed to withstand extraordinary physical demands that no other stars required. For The Crimson Pirate, he performed elaborate sword fights and acrobatic sequences that would have dislodged standard hairpieces within seconds. Stunt coordinator Yakima Kanut developed a revolutionary attachment system using medical-grade surgical mesh bonded directly to Lancaster's scalp, creating what they called the second skin solution that could survive any physical challenge. What distinguished Lancaster's approach was his complete lack of vanity about the situation. Unlike stars who treated their hairpieces as shameful secrets, Lancaster viewed his as professional equipment. Makeup artist Robert Schiffer recalled Lancaster discussing his hairpiece specifications the same way he discussed fight choreography or camera angles, with technical precision and zero embarrassment. He'd often remove it between takes to cool down, treating it no differently than removing a costume jacket. Director John Frankenheimer revealed that Lancaster would sometimes use his hairpiece as a negotiation tool with studios. When executives pushed for changes he opposed, Lancaster would threaten to appear without his hairpiece, knowing it would destroy the film's continuity. This bold strategy worked because Lancaster had already established that he was perfectly comfortable with his baldness, making his threat credible. Kirk Douglas, Lancaster's frequent co-star and close friend, provided the most colorful anecdotes about Lancaster's hairpieces. Douglas recalled their competitive banter, with Lancaster claiming his purchased hair looked better than Douglas's natural hair. During the filming of Gunfight at the OK Corral, Lancaster supposedly challenged Douglas to a swimming race, then dove in wearing his waterproof stunt hairpiece just to prove it would stay attached. This combination of professionalism and humor epitomized Lancaster's pragmatic approach to maintaining his image while performing increasingly dangerous stunts well into his 60s. Sean Connery, the Scottish actor who defined James Bond before boldly abandoning his hairpiece to become Hollywood's first proudly bald leading man, represents the most dramatic evolution in Golden Age hairpiece history. Connery began losing his hair remarkably early, showing significant baldness by age 21, long before fame found him. When producers Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman cast him as 007 in 1962, they immediately invested in elaborate hairpieces that would become as essential to Bond's image as the Aston Martin. Throughout his 7 Bond films, Connery wore increasingly sophisticated hairpieces designed to withstand everything from underwater fights to bedroom scenes. Makeup artist Charles Parker developed a special 007 formula adhesive that could survive any stunt sequence. The hairpieces themselves were engineering marvels, with reinforced bases and triple-secured edges that cost the equivalent of $40,000 each. Connery reportedly hated them, calling them bloody uncomfortable contraptions that made his scalp itch terribly under hot studio lights. What makes Connery's story remarkable is his unprecedented decision to abandon hairpieces entirely in the mid-1970s, just as he reached his 50s. After wearing them for nearly 15 years, Connery appeared in The Offense, showing his natural baldness, shocking audiences accustomed to his perfectly coiffed Bond image. This wasn't a gradual transition, but a bold declaration that he was done with Hollywood's artificial standards. Director John Huston recalled Connery's liberation during The Man Who Would Be King, where he appeared with minimal hair coverage. Connery told Huston he'd rather be authentically bald than uncomfortably fake, adding that women seemed to prefer the real him anyway. This decision could have ended his leading man status, but instead, Connery's confident baldness redefined masculine appeal for mature actors. By the 1980s, Connery had transformed his baldness into a trademark, winning People's Sexiest Man Alive at age 59 while completely bald. His evolution from hairpiece-dependent Bond to proudly bald icon proved that confidence could overcome any physical insecurity. Connery later reflected that abandoning his hairpiece was the most liberating decision of his career, freeing him from the tyranny of Hollywood's impossible standards and allowing him to age with dignity. These 10 Hollywood legends prove that the Golden Age's most perfect images were carefully crafted illusions. From Bogart's tough guy facade to Connery's eventual liberation from his hairpiece, each star's story reveals the extraordinary lengths Hollywood went to maintain the Dream Factory's flawless standards. What's most fascinating isn't the deception itself, but how these hairpieces became essential to creating the iconic characters we still celebrate today. Would Rick in Casablanca have the same impact if Bogart appeared balding? Could James Bond have seduced audiences without that perfectly styled hair? Which revelation shocked you most? Did you ever suspect your favorite Golden Age star was hiding beneath a hairpiece? Drop a comment below sharing which actor surprised you. And if you enjoyed these behind-the-scenes Hollywood secrets, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos exposing Tinseltown's hidden history.